Today we're going to focus on multiplying and dividing fractions. Once again, if you've seen previous tutorials, you know that we've done extensive studies into multiplying and dividing fractions with and without models. Today we're going to do a quick review. Our goal is to apply and enhance previous understanding to the multiplication and division of fractions. So let's review. So we look at this first problem. We're going to multiply 1/2 times 1/3. Well, 1/2 I can shade in, and times 1/3, vertically I can draw 3 separate boxes, and I need 1/3 vertically. And I can see that, well, the overlap that I have is 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 1/6. So that's multiplying a fraction with a model. My alternative is to use a standard algorithm, multiply 1 times 1 and multiply 2 times 3. So we multiply straight across when we multiply fractions. And both ways I get 1/6. Now let's look at a division problem. So we have a division problem, and we can say, well, let's start with 1/2, and that would give us, of course, 1/2. Now I'm going to divide it by 1/3. So I have thirds. So what I really need to ask myself is, well, 1/2 divided by 1/3 is how many thirds? Well, I can see I have 1/3 here, and I have 1/2 of a third here. If I had 2 of the thirds completely filled in, then my answer would be 2. But instead, I have 1 and 1/2. So my answer is 1 and 1/2. And we can, of course, double check our work by multiplying by the reciprocal. So I have 1/2 times, and I always multiply by the reciprocal of the second number, which is the divisor. So times 3/1, or just times 3, is going to give me 3/2. There is one whole group of 2 in the 3, remainder of 1/2. So of course, when I simplify, I get 1.5. Notice how I get the same answer. Now let's look at multiplication using a standard algorithm. Now when I have a whole number times a fraction, I can turn the whole number or a mixed number into a fraction. If it's a whole number, I just put it over 1. So that gives me 9/1 times 1/5. And we can just multiply 9 times 1 and 1 times 5, which would give me 9/5. There's one whole group of 5 in that 9, remainder of 4/5. And if you like, you can do it the traditional way of dividing 9 by 5, and of course you will get 1 and 4/5. Let's look at another example. 2 1/4 divided by 6. First step, we're going to rewrite the division problem, and we're going to rewrite it as fractions. So in order to do that, we go counterclockwise, 4 times 2, and add the 1. So that's going to give me 9/4 divided by 6/1. Now I, of course, want to multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. So 9/4 stays the same. Multiply by 1/6. Now I have a number that if I want to, I can just multiply 9 times 1 and 4 times 6 and reduce at the end, which would give me 9/24. And then of course I can see that I can reduce. Both 9 and 24 can be divided by 3. Divided by 3, which would give me 3/8. Or I could cross cancel. which is what I highly recommend because that way you don't have to reduce at the end. So I see that 9 and 6 I can factor out a 3, which would give me 2 and 3. And then I would just have 3 times 1 and 4 times 2, which would again be 3/8. I hope this review is helping you out. Let's look at another example. So now we have 3 and 1/8 divided by 1 and 2/3. Both mixed numbers that I first want to rewrite as improper fractions. So I multiply, then add. So that would give me 25/8 divided by, and then again multiply, 3 times 1 plus 2 is 5/3. Now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which means I flip the second number, flip the 5/3. So I have 25/8 times 3/5. Again, always check to see if you can factor anything out. Well, and it has to be on the numerator and the denominator. Can I factor out something on the numerator and the denominator? Well, with 8 and 3, I cannot. But with 25 and 5, I can factor out a 5. And that gives me 5 times 3, which is 15, 8 times 1, which is 8. There is one whole group of 8 in 15, and a remainder of 7/8. So I hope that helps you, and I hope this is refreshing your memory. If this isn't enough review, go back to some of the previous tutorials that we have. So a common mistake is that students do not multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. So if they have 1/2 divided by 1/3, sometimes they will, instead of multiplying by the reciprocal of the divisor, they'll use the dividend. So they'll say 2/1 times 1/3. And that will get you the wrong answer. In this case, it would give you 2/3 when the answer should be, as we saw in the previous lesson, 1/2. So that's a common mistake that you want to avoid. No, don't do it. Another common mistake is when students are cross-canceling. So let's say you have 3/5 times 3/15, which I just realized could just be reduced, but we'll just use this as an example anyway. Sometimes students will mistakenly cross-cancel the 3's and the 5 and 15ths. Again, no, you can't do it. You have to factor out the same number from the numerator, which is on the top, and the denominator. So we can see in these problems there actually should be nothing that you can cross-cancel. So those are common mistakes to always help check your work. So today we have reviewed how to multiply and divide whole numbers, fractions, and mixed numbers. We've also done a very quick review of using models. Remember, if you need additional resources, I have plenty more tutorials where I go into more depth on how to multiply and divide fractions. So another great job today, and keep up the hard work. Remember, don't get your dividend and divisors mixed up. Good job.